So let's start with a scenario. Think about the February 2026 MPC decision.
Right, where they just held the repo rate at 5.25%.
Exactly. Now, if the RBI were to, suddenly slash that rate by 200 basis points tomorrow, the textbook macro models tell us that output should just rocket upward.
Oh, absolutely, according to the textbook.
Right, but if you spend any time at all studying the actual Indian economy, injecting massive liquidity might not give you growth. You might just get a collapsing rupee and stagflation.
Yeah, because the real world has friction. Models have blind spots.
Yeah.
And when you are sitting for the RBI DEPR Phase 1 exam, well, those blind spots are exactly what the examiners are hunting for.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is the perfect way to frame our deep dive today.
Definitely. I mean, we know you're coming into this with serious academic rigor. You probably have a master's from somewhere like DSC or JNU. You already know the calculus.
Yeah, you know how to derive the equilibriums. We aren't doing that today.
No, skipping all that. What we're doing today is entirely different. We are exposing how examiners basically weaponize the assumptions of these frameworks to set traps in MCQs.
Exactly. Our singular mission today is high-yield targeted intelligence. We're looking at the boundary conditions, the exact phrasing that trips up top candidates, and just, maximizing your points per minute in that exam hall.
Because in Phase 1, you aren't just fighting the material, you're fighting the clock.
Yeah.
You have to instantly recognize the illusion in the question.
Right. So let's jump straight into the first major minefield, which is the ISLM framework.
Oh, the classic.
Yeah, examiners love to test what actually shifts these curves versus what just causes a movement along them. So IS curve is easy enough, right? Autonomous spending changes.
Yeah, a fiscal expansion, government cuts taxes, or an exogenous export surge. IS shifts right, and both equilibrium Y and the interest rate R go up.
Right, the IS side rarely catches people off guard.
No, the absolute massacre happens on the LM side.
Always. Okay, so we know LM shifts right when the RBI cuts the repo rate, expanding money supply. Y rises, R falls. But let's look at the trap. Let me play the student here.
Go for it. Let's hear the trap.
I'm reading a question. It says the economy is booming due to a huge government infrastructure push. National income, Y, is rising fast. And then it asks, what is the immediate graphical effect on the LM curve?
Okay, a very standard setup.
Right, and my instinct, just thinking about money demand, is that higher income means people demand more money for transactions, right? They need cash for this booming economy.
Makes intuitive sense.
So if money demand rises, the LM curve shifts left, driving interest rates higher. Am I losing a mark there?
You just lost a crucial mark. You fell into literally the most common wrong answer in this section. Income cannot shift LM.
But wait, if my income rises, I demand more money. Doesn't that shift money demand?
Your logic about the money demand function is fine in a vacuum, but you're ignoring the architecture of the graph itself. Think about it. What variable is on the x-axis of the ISLM graph?
Well, it's income. It's Y.
Precisely. Income is already on the axis. It's an endogenous variable in this space. So mathematically, a change in a variable on the axis cannot shift the curve.
Oh, wow. It just moves you along it.
Exactly. You slide along the existing LM curve. When the government spends, IS shifts right, income goes up, you demand more money, which drives up the interest rate to clear the market. But graphically, the LM curve does not move an inch.
That is incredibly sneaky. So they bait you with money demand rises, hoping you treat it as an exogenous shock.
Yeah, it's a pure trap. The rule for you listening is absolute. LM shifts only when money supply changes, or if there's a purely exogenous shock to money demand.
Like a bank panic.
Right, where people hoard cash regardless of their income. But income moves you along LM. Write that down.
Absolutely. Though, this highlights a big limitation of ISLM. It assumes a fixed price level. And the RBI doesn't live in a fixed price world. They target inflation.
Which means we have to unfreeze prices.
Exactly. Which transitions us straight into the aggregate demand and aggregate supply model, the ADAS model.
And here the MCQ lens changes. It's all about diagnosing shocks. You have to look at how prices, P, and output, Y, are moving relative to each other.
Right, so a demand shock is simple. Animal spirits surge, AD shifts right. Prices and output move in the exact same direction. Both go up.
Or both go down if demand collapses. But they won't test a simple demand shock. They're going to test stagflation.
Oh, for sure. And they'll disguise it. So here's the scenario. A sudden, massive spike in global oil prices. The question asks for the graphical effect. The trap answer is aggregate demand shifts to the left.
Which looks so tempting. You think oil is expensive, people buy fewer goods, demand collapses.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. People see buying less and assume demand drop. I always compare a demand shock to a car running out of gas. It just sort of coasts to a halt. Output drops, prices cool off.
But a supply shock is totally different.
Right. A supply shock is like the engine seizing up while your foot is on the gas. The friction is immense.
That's a great analogy. An oil spike fundamentally alters the cost of production. It's a negative supply shock. It shifts the short-run aggregate supply, the SRAS curve, to the left.
And so output plummets, but because costs spiked, prices skyrocket. P and Y move in opposite directions. That is the literal definition of stagflation.
Exactly. Stagflation is always a supply-side story. If P and Y move opposite, the shock hit the AS curve, not AD.
And the exam also loves testing the long run here. The trap is assuming supply shocks permanently change potential output.
Which they don't. Remember, the long-run aggregate supply curve, the LRAS, is perfectly vertical at potential output. In the long run, money is neutral, nominal prices are flexible.
Right. Output is determined by real variables, like tech and labor, not prices, which is the perfect pivot. If prices and output move inversely, what happens to employment?
Which brings us to the Phillips Curve. The breakdown of the original 1958 Phillips Curve is a heavily tested area.
Yeah, so the original said there's a trade-off. Higher inflation equals lower unemployment.
But the MCQ trap will say something like, the Phillips curve proves monetary policy can permanently lower unemployment.
Which is completely false.
Totally false, only in the short run. To understand why, you have to apply the Friedman-Felts expectation-augmented Phillips curve. It introduces adaptive expectations.
Right, let's unpack the mechanics. Central bank prints money to boost jobs. Inflation rises. Labor contracts are sticky, so real wages drop.
Labor becomes artificially cheap. Firms hire more, unemployment drops. It looks like a win.
I call it a sugar rush. You get a quick burst of energy, more jobs, but it's an illusion. Workers have money illusion. They see nominal wages stay the same and think they're fine.
Until they go to the grocery store.
Exactly, the crash. They realize their purchasing power is gone, so they demand higher nominal wages.
And when firms pay those higher wages, labor isn't cheap anymore. They lay off all those extra workers. Unemployment snaps right back to the natural rate.
Just with a higher baseline of inflation. So the long-run Phillips curve is perfectly vertical at the NARU, the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment.
That's the key. NARU is a supply-side constraint. It is not policy controllable. The trade-off entirely disappears in the long run.
So if monetary policy is powerless to permanently lower unemployment past NARU, who actually holds the power, this sets up the ultimate academic cage match.
Monetarists versus Keynesians.
Yes. The exam tests this by pushing models to extreme boundaries. So Keynesians say fiscal policy works best when the LM curve is totally flat. The liquidity trap.
Right, interest rates are so low, money demand is perfectly elastic, monetary policy is useless.
But monetarists are the exact opposite. They believe velocity is stable, MV equals PY. Money supply is the only effective lever. They want rules, like Friedman's K% rule, not discretionary activist policy.
Okay, so here's the trap for this section. The MCQ asks about complete crowding out. The statement is, crowding out is complete under a vertical LM curve.
And the candidate thinks, well, crowding out means government spending fails. Keynesian policy fails. So it must be a Keynesian concept.
Exactly what the examiner wants you to think. And it's totally wrong. Complete crowding out under a vertical LM is the classical or monetarist position.
Oh, wait, really? Let's break down the bond market mechanics of that. If the government spends massively, they run a deficit.
Right. They issue bonds to borrow money. To sell those bonds, bond prices fall, so interest rates spike.
And a vertical LM means money demand is completely unresponsive to interest rates. It only depends on income.
Exactly. So interest rates shoot through the roof to clear the market. They spike so violently that they crush private investment completely.
So for every rupee the government spends, exactly 1 rupee of private investment is wiped out. Net shift in aggregate demand is 0.
It's the ultimate failure point of Keynesian fiscal expansion. That's why vertical LM is the monetarist dream scenario.
Wow, okay. That's a huge takeaway. Vertical LM crowding out is monetarist. Write that down. But, monetarists say money supplies everything. How does an RBI repo rate cut actually reach a business owner?
That's the plumbing, the monetary transmission mechanism.
The exam will test the chain. Repo rate to call money rate to MCLR or EBLR to bank lending rate, which hits credit demand, then investment, and finally GDP.
It's a long chain. like dominoes. And the MCQ trap will say a repo rate cut always raises investment in GDP.
So what does this all mean? If the RBI pushes the first domino, the repo rate, shouldn't the last domino always fall?
Not if the dominoes are glued to the table. The chain can break at any link. Look at bank balance sheets. Right now, gross NPAs are at a multi-year low, around 2.6%. But if NPAs are high...
Banks get terrified. They won't lend. Regardless of the repo rate, they just park money in safe government securities.
Exactly. Or even with cheap credit, what if animal spirits are low?
Right, the demand side. If businesses don't see consumer demand returning, they aren't taking out loans for new factories. Credit demand stays flat.
The exam will also absolutely test the structural friction of the benchmarks, the shift from MCLR to EBLR in October 2019.
Oh, this is crucial. Under MCLR, banks tied lending rates to their internal cost of funds, mostly retail fixed deposits. And FT rates are super sticky.
Right. If the RBI cuts rates, banks can't retroactively slash the rate they promised on a 3-year FD, so they couldn't afford to lower lending rates.
Transmission stalls, which is why EBLR is better, because it links directly to an external benchmark, like the repo rate. It bypasses internal liabilities and adjusts faster.
Faster transmission. Perfect. Okay, let's lock this all in. Time for the quick MCQ review round.
All right, rapid fire. I'll fire the questions. You give the exact exam answer. Ready? First, what happens to LM when money demand rises?
It shifts left and the interest rate rises.
Boom. Second, which shock causes stagflation?
Negative supply shock. Always.
Perfect. Third, NIRU stands for?
Non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment.
Right. Fourth, who proposed the K% rule?
Milton Friedman.
Fifth, what is the Keynesian liquidity trap?
Interest rates are so low that money demand is perfectly elastic. LM is horizontal, and monetary policy is totally ineffective.
Awesome. Number 6, crowding out occurs when?
When fiscal expansion raises interest rates, which reduces private investment.
Spot on. 7th, the long-run Phillips curve is?
Perfectly vertical.
And finally, EBLR is better than MCLR.
Because it's directly linked to the repo rate and adjusts much faster.
Flawless. Okay, if you're listening to this, you just absorbed a massive amount of highly testable Phase 1 material.
Yeah, watch out for the income-shifting LM trap and the demand shock causing stagflation illusion.
Totally. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one final really provocative thought we should leave you with.
Yeah, combining the econometrics module with the macro module.
I love when these collide.
So our sources note that India's headline inflation target, that 4%, is based on the CPI. And econometrically, the CPI uses a fixed base year basket of goods. It's a Laspers type index.
Right. And the fundamental mathematical flaw of a Laspers index is an inherent upward bias. Because the basket is fixed, it ignores the substitution effect.
Exactly. If apples get super expensive, a rational consumer buys oranges. But the Laspers index assumes you stubbornly keep buying the expensive apples, so it mathematically overstates the actual cost of living increase.
Wow. So, connect that to the macro policy. The RBI is legally mandated to hit a 4% CPI target. But if the index is mathematically engineered to overstate inflation.
Is the central bank systematically over-tightening monetary policy based on an illusion?
That is a staggering implication.
Oh.
Are they holding rates high, suppressing demand, maybe sacrificing real GDP growth just to fight a statistical phantom?
It really makes you think. Theoretical models and statistical tools don't exist in a vacuum. Their flaws compound in the real world.
That is exactly the kind of multidimensional thinking you need for this exam. You aren't just memorizing formulas, you're learning how to spot the invisible tripwires.
Good luck navigating the minefield.
Good luck out there.